Hey guys, I'm just testing something real quick. I'm hoping that you can go ahead and hear me through the mic. Let me do a quick mic test. Looks like it seems to be working a little bit, but either way, I wanted to go through something that was a particularly difficult topic. I want you to understand why it's really special to me, and that is whether or not essentially a president can be arrested. And the ironic thing is that a lot of people believe that a past president or a current president could not be arrested. I had an individual calling me, and as you know, it's super late tonight. It's like 1:04 a.m. But I had a person call me today at the law firm and basically really give it to me over the phone about how President Trump was going to be arrested. He was going to be dragged through the streets. It was going to be this whole harangue, yada, yada, yada. And as I was listening, and keep in mind, when somebody screams at me, howdy me, when somebody screams at me, I am an excellent listener because sometimes I can learn something from what's coming from all of the things that they're saying. And I'm starting to realize that when people scream at me, it has nothing to do with the law firm. It has to do with the YouTube channel, which it is, you know what I mean? It is what it is. So here's the big thing that I just want to cover with you guys real quick. There is a lot of question, a lot of fury on behalf of the left right now as to what essentially, Brenda Marion, thank you so much. Jason Hits, me, howdy. There's a lot of anger on the left side about what's going to happen with President Trump as a result of January 6th. Howdy from New Jersey. Howdy. And as a result of that, I wanted to just share my thoughts since I got reamed out today by just some random caller who wouldn't share his name with me. Called first to the law firm, didn't get me, got somebody back office, hung up, called again, I picked up, and then gave it to me. Here is the reality as to essentially whether or not a past or sitting president can be arrested. Let's go through the basics real quick. All the way back in time, there was essentially a president that we all know as Ulysses S. Grant. He was the only one that was ever arrested. What happened was he was riding essentially, I'll just read the thing real quick here, right here. On the first occasion, the president was somewhat sassy. This is from Insider. With the officer as he stopped his carriage. The city was having problems with speeding at the time, and a mother and child have recently been injured as a result. Grant said, "Well, officer, what do you want with me?" West replied, "I want to inform you, Mr. President," this was a police officer, they even note in here that he was African-American, "that you are violating the law by speeding along the street. Your fast driving, sir, has set the example for a lot of other gentlemen," meaning people of a higher class of individual. Grant apologized and told the officer it would not happen again. But on the very next day, Grant was speeding so fast through Georgetown in an area West was patrolling west of the officer. It took the officer an entire block to slow the president down. Entire block. Grant apparently greeted the officer with a smile and looked like a schoolboy who had been caught in a guilty act by a teacher. I think they had horses back then, so this is kind of buggy times. West informed the president he'd violated the city's speeding laws again. The HOAs are out. "I cautioned you yesterday, Mr. President, about fast driving, and you said, sir, that it would not occur again," West reportedly told Grant. "I'm very sorry, Mr. President, to have to do it. For you are the chief of the nation. I am nothing but a policeman. But duty is duty, sir, and I will have to place you under arrest." So President Grant was arrested. The president and other speeders, apparently he had like a promenade of people. This would never happen nowadays. If a policeman walked up to a sitting president who was speeding in his car, the policeman would be fired, likely, and or disappear forever because the Secret Service would handle it and probably through whatever special laws they have the dictating authority as to essentially the protection of the president and national security. The president and other speeders were taken to the local police station. He was arrested. He was detained. Officers at the station were reportedly unsure if they could charge a sitting president if he'd not been impeached first, which is a correct issue. You have to basically go through the impeachment process for removal. In the end, Grant paid a $20 bond, but didn't show up to court. That's what the presidents do. They use the legal system. Richard Nixon. Let's go through this real quick. Richard Nixon. Everybody knows Richard Nixon. Howdy. Very good to see you. Thank you for the 5 stars, SK. Richard Nixon, Proclamation 4311. Was a presidential proclamation issued by President of the United States, Gerald Ford, on September 8, 1974, granting a full and unconditional pardon to Richard Nixon, his predecessor, for any crimes that he might have committed against the United States as president. Hillary Clinton. Last week, Congress received a brief 9-page report from the State Department. I know she wasn't president, but still a good thing to look at, which summarizes the department's investigations into Hillary Clinton's use of personal email account to conduct work business while she was Secretary of State. Now, look, the Republicans and the Democrats, they do that, and they were doing that all the way up until basically the whole Hillary thing fell apart. They were using their own servers. They were using RNC servers. They were using DNC servers. They were all doing this stuff. Okay, this is not just her. The report can be fairly summarized in 2 sentences. She shouldn't have done that, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Thus, America finally has closure on a minor scandal that many of the nation's most powerful and influential news editors treated as if it were the most important issue facing voters in the 2016 election. In just 6 days, according to an analysis of 2016 coverage published in the Columbia Journal Review, the New York Times ran as many cover stories about Hillary Clinton's emails as they did about all policy issues combined in the 69 days leading up to the election. And the Times was hardly alone in this regard. Now, we know now, and that was from Vox, we know now that their brilliant approach to how severe it was to use a different server, even though the law was set up that you had to use a specific server in that position for all work-related email for security of the nation. We now know that Vox is covering that this was a minor scandal purely because nobody knows what was really in those emails to the full degree because they were erased. Having a home server. Hey. All right, so now on to the big one, Donald Trump. This is from Huffington Post, which just as a beginning to foray into this is a very left-leaning writing group. So, you know what I mean? Just as I read this, really, if you have cringe moments where you're like, oh God, you know, it's so drippy with lefty stuff, and there's no thought into the analysis of what people over here might think. There's no middle ground. It's Huffington Post. Just breathe with me on this one. Donald Trump is not going to prison. By Nathalie Baptiste, 01/06/2022, 5:45 a.m. He may be culpable for the Capitol riot on January 6th, but it's unlikely he'll face any real consequences. Notice how they put he may be culpable? Because none of them can prove that he's culpable. If Donald Trump runs for president again in 2024, Robert Palmer, a 54-year-old Florida man, will still be in prison for assaulting U.S. Capitol police officers during the January 6th insurrection. What's interesting is that when she starts this off, it starts off with the identity of Trump's a bad man because somebody that he pushed to riot is essentially going to be in jail when he becomes president, which, not that that's a bad tactic. It's a smart tactic if you're going to attack the right, because the bottom line is they do it over and over. You know, they look at all the people that President Trump has quasi or has thrown under the bus. So it's not a bad tactic to attack him in that regard. These people are very smart when they write the shaping of these articles. Palmer, who was sentenced to 63 months, has received the longest sentence of the more than 150 defendants who have pleaded guilty to charges stemming from the storming of the U.S. Capitol. He was just one of the hundreds of Trump supporters who rushed law enforcement in an attempt to overturn a free and fair election. After losing to Democrat Joe Biden in November 2020, Trump spent weeks promoting the lie that the election was stolen from him, culminating in the attack the following January. Trump incited the riot that left 5 people dead and dozens. All right, so there's a couple of problems with this. First, they're using the word incited. It's never been proved. And not that it can't be proved, it's just they don't have any proof of it. But remember, it's not a middle ground, and that's none of the news. You know, we always focus on Fox and CNN, but none of this news is like here anymore. We used to have here. In fact, they would not be allowed to publish things unless they were here way back in the day, the days where they had to line up little blocks on the printer press. Let's keep reading. But while countless people are facing consequences for what they did that day, Trump still hasn't. Instead, in a darkly ironic twist, Palmer and countless others will watch behind bars should Trump launch his next presidential bid. The punishments for the insurrection have ranged widely. Texas real estate agent Jenna Ryan, who famously said she definitely wasn't going to jail because she has blonde hair and white skin, received 60 days. Paul Hodgkins, a Floridian, was sentenced to 8 months in prison for entering the Senate chamber. Hundreds of people have been charged with various crimes, so there are more sentences for defendants on the way, but 1 year later, it's becoming increasingly likely that Trump will not be held accountable. I've heard the questions from Democrats in my life and seen tweets from large public interest groups. Why is Donald Trump in prison? The answer is simple. People like him rarely end up behind bars. As his supporters languish incarcerated, Trump's inner circle will continue plotting to finish destroying what's left of American democracy. All right, so once again, let's read that sentence again. As his supporters languish incarcerated, Trump's inner circle will continue plotting to finish destroying what's left of American democracy. And that's the thing. All right, we're not going to go more into this article because it's so BSy. GXY, thank you. By the way, I am calling you tonight no matter what. So just, realize after the show I'm calling you. So there's going to be like 2 more shows and I'm calling you. All right, so here's what you guys need to know about basically what's happening. And tying this all back into the retired, veteran affair individuals who are looking for a pension, compensation, disabled people, SSI, SSDI, all of these things, okay? What's happening is this. I got screamed at today at the law firm because somebody dictated to me that Trump definitively would be arrested and go to prison. I can almost assure you with, 99% absolute whatever, that essentially at the end of the day, Trump will not be going to jail. He will not be going to prison. His amount of time dealing with interrogatories, maybe going in and answering some questions, very low, very light, hardly any. What you have to understand is that nobody in America is supposed to truly be above the Constitution. And when they say that, it means something very specific. It means that the Constitution is the cloud layer that we all live under, and that nobody is above the fundamentals of the cloud layer, meaning that nobody is allowed to break the law and get away with breaking the law. We know realistically that's not entirely accurate based on what history has taught us. We know that essentially those people in high executive levels, especially in particular the presidential role, are not usually gone after. And the reason why that is that there's a constitutional sovereignty. You can call it whatever you want, but it's basically an allowance for a president to go ahead and be forgiven for the actions that took place during the presidency and after the presidency. So what's happening is this. A lot of people are getting all revved up with expectations. Remember how they did with the whole Trump-Russia thing, and then that tied to a Hillary attorney, and then it just became a crap show. What's happening is this. People are getting their expectations about Trump being destroyed, and essentially democracy, which most people don't even know how to define it. Honestly, ask yourself, do you know what the definition of democracy is? And here, I'll pull up the actual definition of democracy. And when I read it to you, you're going to be like, that's not what I thought it is. A system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives, right? It sounds simple at first, but then you realize we don't exactly have that. We have like a republic democracy thing. We evolved into this weird, different thing. And we had to. The point here is this. The department that oversees essentially bringing charges against somebody like the president does not bring charges against the president. They don't bring charges against the sitting president. They don't bring charges against presidents who are now passed. They don't do it. So I want everybody's expectation, if you hate Trump, you love Trump, to be a reality that he's not going to be arrested. They're not going to be passing any laws to try and beat him down and make it so he can never be president again. The reality is that the Constitution does, to some degree, step aside when it comes to presidential figures. It's always done that. As an attorney, I have to say to you that nobody is above the law, but in reality, when we look at history, history has taught us something very different. So, for the person who screamed at me that President Trump would obviously de facto be arrested, there's no proof in history that this can actually happen because they're not willing to bring the charges. And so the next part of this video, I want to give you a personal note. And this is a personal note for me, somebody who, is a master mason, been part of groups, things like that. Even though I'm like the crappiest mason ever, I never go to lodge. I wanted to actually read something to you that I wrote well over a decade ago, way beyond that, actually. And I want you just to think about what I'm reading to you so that you can essentially understand what it is I'm getting at. This is something I wrote a long time ago. You can hate it. You can love it. It may not make any sense to you at all. But this is me sharing a piece of art that I wrote that I think is relevant every day and is still relevant today. I wrote this when I was in law school. And I wrote this basically when I got a crap grade on an unimportant exam. The world claims I'm mentally below average by the grade on the paper that seems a bit drippy with red ink. But alas, fear not, good sir. For I did not create the normative scale that so blessed me. Crazy, right? There are so many people in the world that are on the Isle of Misfit Minds today. Do you remember when the scales weren't justice, when they were merely the dream of one who claimed to be holier than thou? It's an idea, the exam, the code, the police, the jail. Mind your prison so that you can see the fallacies of a brain not bound by the structures of your own bars. Stop, think. That mental grenade just went off where your dogmatic morality questioned its heritage, its godly origin. Way back, think farther, now stop. People of old claimed that God gave all thoughts to and of man until man decided that he wanted the glory and got rid of the middleman. The same man who claimed to be holier than thou patented a new way to copyright under his own trademark. You only get so many moments in life, whispered the white beard to the black beard. They have been hailing me the last tycoon. Sadly, I concede, but I would imagine you had claimed a mental stake in the now forewarned land. Nevertheless, history is rarely kind to those who do not own the means to rewrite it. Currency has its favor in due form, but whether gold, destruction, or letters on a page, you are but a cat in a cage that I built. Figure out how to bend the bars with your mind, and you will steal my title, said the aging face with the challenging eyes. Watch the Constitution swallow you whole if you surround yourself with those of a singular gaze. The tick-tock, big hand moves the little hand that will never grow up. It's time to wake up, ladies and gentlemen, and so rings the biological pocket watch. Please throw out your notes. Stare at the page I've handed you and repeat after me. We the people, the dying, the hungry, the wealthy, and we the people, the dogs, the horses, and the lions, see only the four corners and refuse to redefine, thus by carving, tearing, erasing the remains. We the people throw out our teeth. As our words do not deserve to be armed, please repeat after me that we the people, so choosing, so blindly ignorant, with the warm fountain of history behind us, say yes, yes, yes. The colder white caps will remain at bay for now until the yacht ships the storm into this well-charted territory. And so it is said, and so it is written, Article 1, Section 2, Subsection 3, Paragraph 4, Finding 5, stand slowly, straighten back, palm applauding palm, and thy shadows consume me all at once, while I search my hope for that glimmering light. Walter Knott, the day after being raised to a 32nd degree Master Mason. I'm sharing this with you because I think this is important. And I want you to understand the reality of America. America works on threats. Our judicial system works on threats. Our penal system works on threats. Our military works on threats. Our civil system works on threats. Every aspect of it. And who is in control of threats? Well, you would think money is the thing that controls people. It's not. It's always been the threat and the ability to back it up with harm. It is, putting it in James Bond terms, the license to kill. Who or what is the only thing on earth that has the capacity to issue a license to kill? Well, that would be the president in charge of the government, right? In the sense of the highest of the high. But the government, through other acting agents, can of course do it, but it's always a government figure. Governments own the only license to kill. That's how it works. They own the only means by which to create control under threat. And that threat is what drives every aspect of human life on earth. Think I'm wrong? Let me give you an example. There are countries that are afraid to invade other countries because of what America might do to them. There are countries who are trying to build their militaries up in fear of other places like China or America. The reason America spends so much money on its military is because on the chessboard, they want to have as many of the power move pieces so that other countries never even try to commit a sin against America. This is because America knows the value of power through violence. Power through violence has always been useful, whether it's the nuclear bomb, a giant military, a big navy, some really badass Marines, whatever. And as a result of that, the power is not in the sense of which country has the most money. The power remains in the sense of which country has the most ability to cause harm. But then there was a problem. There was a big issue. There was the nuclear bomb. The nuclear bomb, well, any country that had that could basically do horrible things to a much bigger country that had more. It changed the power dynamic. But the problem is, upon its use, it is singular in the great ticking action of changing the human race, where one powerful president could decide the end of millions of lives, while the other powerful president would retaliate in the same form and fashion. You see, you can use a nuclear bomb when nobody else has it and be okay. Japan. But you can't use it now and still be okay because other people have it. This is analogous to America with many other, forms of military might. Every time we built a better jet, somebody matched it. Every time we had a better ship, somebody matched it. It was an arms race. If we don't go to space and give the human race a new future, right? The final frontier to go and do great things in, then unfortunately this country, along with all the other countries, would destroy themselves over the greed of who has the most capacity to cause harm. So as a result of this, I know that this is a theoretical analysis of how does power work at the presidential level. Countries don't go after their presidents usually, especially the US, because if they were to do that, it would show weakness to other countries. And if weakness is shown, it makes the country that is showing the weakness incapable of causing fear and showing potential of destruction. And if you have that going away, then you are basically losing your ability to bully other countries around. Think of countries as big bullies. Some of them are huge, some of them are small, but they all have their piece on the chessboard. They all bully us around as human beings. If we didn't have to spend so much money on a defense budget, there would not be a single homeless person. There would not be a single student debt. There would not be a single bank account that didn't have some money in it. We would have steak dinners all the time. We would have the best education we've ever had. But it is the greed of other countries and the greed of the United States government at the highest level, which will never allow a president, whether sitting or past, to be arrested. It is what it is. Anyways, guys, I will catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be doing 2 more videos, and then I have to do a hearing at 9 a.m. I'll catch you a little bit later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.